What you're going to learn about tonight is about 3 August alumni who have participated in different NatureBridge programs. And you're going to learn a little bit about what they experienced going through NatureBridge years ago, sometimes years and years ago, and what they're doing now. And we hope that you can draw a through line from their experience and a bevy of other experiences that have led them to be essentially fully actualized environmental stewards. I also fully expect that this room is going to fill up more, so you may want to come forward, particularly if you already have your drink. So let me make a few introductions. First of all, on the far end is Virginia Delgado. You're going to learn more about Virginia. She is a naturalist and interpreter with the East Bay Regional Parks District. She has participated in a number of NatureBridge programs, starting as a 6th grader, and we're going to hear a little bit about that experience. We have Pheng Lor. Pheng grew up in Fresno, California. He participated in a NatureBridge program that brought him, and this is going to catch a lot of you off guard, brought him to Sequoia National Park as well as Yosemite National Park. He is now a junior at a little college across the way called Cal, and he is a conservation studies major. And then immediately to my right, your left, is Mike Reynolds. Mike is some guy we picked up. Mike is was the acting director of the National Park Service, and then 2 months ago, we were very fortunate enough that Mike took over as superintendent at Yosemite National Park. So if you'll welcome our august panelists. So Virginia, you've had multiple touch points with NatureBridge, and I'm wondering if for the crowd, just to warm us up, give us a sense of that first experience you had as a 6th grader going to a NatureBridge program.
Sure, Phil. So my first experience with NatureBridge happened all the way when I was in 6th grade. During that time, I was brand new to the Bay Area. I just moved from San Diego. So to make new friends, I decided to go join the Marine Biology Club. That club then took a trip to the Marin Headlands for 5 days. I had no idea where that was. I was brand new. But all I remember is seeing the Golden Gate Bridge and seeing the city. That was the first time I really got that close to it. And then right when we were about to go over the bridge, we turn right. We go into the headlands. We go through this tunnel, and I just remember being amazed that we're now in the national park, so close to a metropolitan city. How crazy is that? And I remember meeting my educator, who was just so enthusiastic, made me feel right at home. And ever since then, I've been hooked. I was amazed by the rugged coastline coming from San Diego. That's nothing I've ever seen before. So when I asked about how did this came to be, she taught me a lot about geology. And thinking about that, she taught me a song to teach me about the geology of the place. And I still sing that song today to my students when I take them on naturalist walks around the Bay Area. So, yeah.
So that makes me think, Virginia, and Pheng will ask you to tell your story, but it makes me think, for those of you who have young kids, I don't know, about 5th grade, 6th grade, can most of you get a little bit from them out of what they did even that day? And here's Virginia still singing a song she learned, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. I'm going to get wrong on the ages, but Virginia, thanks for sharing that story. Pheng, you grew up in Fresno, so you're in the Central Valley. You're an hour and a half from Yosemite, and yet maybe you weren't totally aware of your national parks and these epic landscapes that were so close to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your first NatureBridge experience?
Yeah. So my first NatureBridge experience was in Sequoia National Park, and I was in high school. I was a sophomore, and I was working with a youth journalist nonprofit, and our director decided to kind of hook us up with Katie Wallace from NatureBridge, who was gonna take us out to a park, and show us kind of like what it's like to backpack, et cetera. And growing up in Fresno, my exposure to green spaces were like the local parks. There were 2 parks, Woodward Park and Roding Park, and you go to one or the other for Easter. And so I went to 1 park a year and nothing beyond that. So It was definitely very, nerve-wracking. I've never been away from my parents, and I've never been to a, bigger, larger park before. So the opportunist in me was successful, and I ended up in Sequoia. And yeah, I was just telling Virginia earlier, it was like we were driving, and I saw a few hills, and then it turned into a few mountains, and then the next thing I knew, I was in front of a sequoia, and and it was also 25 to 30 degrees cooler. So, whew, yeah, that was my first experience.
And I'm going to ask folks if you can come a little bit closer. Pheng, I was lucky enough to grab a few photos, I think, of you in some of these experiences. And maybe, I'm not sure if you want to pass those around, but they can be mementos of your experience from a kid growing up in Fresno to heading out to Sequoia and Yosemite.
Yeah, so this photo was in Yosemite, and this was my the 2-week field research course. And that was my second time in the wilderness. So yeah, that's me. That's the group of students I was with, high school students, but clearly very bright, and I learned so much that summer. So yeah, the only thing I have from that.
Anne, would you mind grabbing these and sort of handing these around so folks can look? And Colleen Cassidy, happy birthday to you. Thank you for being here tonight. So Mike, now Mike has a unique experience. Here he is running Yosemite National Park. He's superintendent of Yosemite National Park. But you also grew up in the park. Yeah. So you probably knew everything you needed to know about being a fully emerged environmental steward, everything about your landscape. You were probably connected in ways that none of us could possibly imagine. So if you did something with NatureBridge, you probably didn't learn anything.
So, thank you, Phil. But I hate to burst your bubble, but kids that often grow up in a place like that want to get out of it because it isn't cool, right? There's no movies. They talk to their friends. Nowadays, it's on social media. I can't even imagine. I was well more than 15 years ago. It was, I believe, the 70s, baby. So I'm your old guy tonight. And it was called the Yosemite Institute. And what they did is about once a year, and this is the early phases of your organization, right? It was heart and soul folks up in Yosemite that probably worked a little with us in the summertime, and then these instructors. And they figured out that the kids really actually didn't know a lot about what they lived in, didn't appreciate it. And they would take us out for a week out of the school. We went to Crane Flat. It was in the nascent stages of being a place to stay. And I learned that the park had great gray owls for the first time, walking around Crane Flat. And it blew me away. I was young. I was a fifth, sixth grader. But still, the fact that these kinds of animals, and then to understand them. And the other thing that it did strangely that year, that spring that we did that, is for some reason most of us didn't know, the kids that grew up in Yosemite, there were about 100 of us during that era, didn't understand the glaciology story of Yosemite. There were all kinds of legends that your parents told you. So it's very important, I think, to go local sometimes too. It really is.
Thank you, Mike. And I can't say how lucky we are at NatureBridge to have Mike in this incredible leadership role and your role for a year as the acting director of the National Park Service. Really an incredible champion.
Thank you. And we're lucky that these folks are coming up to take over for us.
Well, speaking of, you were appointed by President Obama, or under the Obama administration. Virginia, you actually, after you left NatureBridge, you came back to us years later as a high school student, and that led to a pretty phenomenal interaction through NatureBridge with an incredible advocate for our work. Can you tell us a little bit about the program that you got engaged to and what happened?
Sure. So after my sixth grade experience, fast forward to when I was in high school, I signed up to be an intern for NatureBridge, and after that, I went on to college to study environmental studies at SF State. But in the summertime, I would still come back to NatureBridge and work as a summer educator for local students at Coastal Camp. During that time, there's something going on called the Great Outdoor Initiative. You guys might have remembered it from way back in 2011. It was an initiative that was brought from President Obama to engage communities that were underrepresented in conservation, in recreation. And during that time, NatureBridge was invited to a conference, and they asked me to represent them. In that conference, we had small groups to talk about access and accessibility and representation in parks. Then one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I found myself talking to a panel that consisted of the Secretary of Interior, and a video conference that from the other end was at Washington with officials and President Obama listening in. So from that point on, NatureBridge kind of gave me a voice in the platform to speak about accessibility, and it just ignited a passion for me ever since. After graduating college, I became a park ranger for the East Bay Regional Park District, starting in 2014. So that kind of sparked a lot for me in my life. And so far as initiative, the next thing that came out of that was Every Kid in the Park program, which allows every fourth grader in the United States to be able to have an annual pass to national parks. So I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you're in this breakout where we're talking about from students to stewards, and that's what we hope you see, is that maybe NatureBridge can be that touch point, can be that influence that enables or allows you to seek that next experience, to go beyond yourself, to move from being a student to a steward. And the fact that an incredible conference that you participated in wound up getting every American fourth grader an annual pass to their national park is pretty phenomenal. So thank you, Virginia. So, Pheng, you were talking about your program with WildLink, and when you and I were chatting offline, you said it was really interesting because I was the only Hmong student among all of my peers there, and that stood out to you. And then you told me that it led to a choice in terms of what you were going to do from both a studies and volunteer perspective. So can you tell us what you're doing at Cal and sort of that thoughts on being the sole Hmong student and what that meant for you?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, just a little bit about Cal and this Hmong student population. There's 15 of us, and we're doing our best to recruit and, keep up, retention for our current students. But with the small population there, I did go to Cal I went in for environmental sciences, but of course I went there for my small community and just to learn how to foster that small community and best empower ourselves. But through NatureBridge and other environmental programs, I've definitely learned the importance of education, right? But I think it's also important that I in high school participated in other things like the organization of the Student of Color Environmental Coalition at Berkeley, that does a lot of work for representation. They're also a very small org, and my involvement now extends to the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program. There's a few of those programs throughout the country, and they invest in undergraduate students looking at diversity, inclusion, and equity, and how to go into the conservation and environmental fields and talk about that, right? So, yeah, I think with NatureBridge and my experience with NatureBridge and being the only Hmong student, it's definitely made me see the importance of representation, and that's, kind of what I'm doing.
Thank you. Thanks, Pheng. So, Mike, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, which is, NatureBridge is an organization, among others, but we serve 30,000 kids a year, get them into National Park for week-long experiences like Virginia and Pheng had. But a question I get, and we're the National Park Service's largest nonprofit educational partner. But I get asked the question, why doesn't Yosemite just do this work? Why doesn't the National Park Service just do this work instead of sort of partnering with or outsourcing to another organization? What would you tell folks who ask that question?
So while we're very proud of our rangers and our education history, the interpretive rangers we call them, and many times now education rangers, it's really designed under a taxpayer dollar model to serve all of the American people. And to be inspired by these young leaders, and I think of this last story about how important it is to be approaching a diverse America. If you haven't been to Yosemite lately, it's getting incredibly diverse with its visitors. We want to have everybody represented on that staff. And we are having struggles with that in the Park Service. It needs to grow, and I'm waiting for them to graduate. Hurry up. And but you're really good at it. That's the short line. And we're good at lots of things, but we have to do sewer systems, restaurants, hotels, law enforcement. We're a small city, and we're doing this every day. We don't specialize the way you do. We don't have the kinds of inspirational people that necessarily we have room for all of them that, like you do. And so you are the experts, and we want to welcome you in and be a support role to you. That's how we should move ahead in the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Virginia, so I don't know if folks know this, but you recently won a national award for your work as an interpretive ranger. So crow a little bit. Tell everybody what it was. I mean, I think it's sort of a big deal. You met the Secretary of the Interior, Jewel, and you talked to President Obama, but you won a national award for your work. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, sure. I'm still in shock, to be honest. It was a shock when I heard that I won this award, and just to be recognized on a national level and receive this award in Washington was truly just an honor for me. And I think the reason why I was able to get this award and be recognized because I'm just very passionate about this work. I'm very passionate in accessibility and really passionate about inspiring youth. And I feel that a lot of youth, they're able to look at me and be able to relate, see my life, see my experience, and see it in their own lives. Yeah, it allowed me to set my sights on other goals in life as well. So who knows, maybe I should prepare myself for maybe Mike Reynolds' position one day. One day.
I'll leave the files. And let me make sure, and I may get the organization wrong, but for all of the national interpreters and rangers across this nation, Virginia won the award for Best New Interpreter in the entire system of national, regional, county parks last year.
Thank you, Phil.
So I need to just do a time check. We've got about 10 minutes left until we got to be wrapped up here. So I'm going to ask Pheng a question, Mike a question, and then maybe if there's one question from the crowd, we may have the time to do that. So Pheng, I think you've painted a great picture of that access that you had through NatureBridge to Sequoia National Park, then your additional work in Yosemite, your studies now at Cal, but you are also doing plenty of volunteer work, including with students from Oakland High School. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing there?
Yeah. So currently I'm a college advisor assistant at Oakland High School, and I think, with my interest in environmentalism, conservation, I think it's very environmental justice oriented because of the need for accessibility and representation. And so working with the students also in a very low income, underrepresented community in many capacities, I think one step to helping these students, and me being an environmental steward also is one, helping them get access to education, right? So that's what I do at Oakland High. It was a very long day yesterday, and today is the college decision day. So although I can't be there, I'm very glad to be here with you all. And so, that's what I'm doing. And it's good work. Very passionate about education, especially environmental education and bridging that, awareness and education gap in communities.
Okay, so Mike, before I ask you the question, Virginia and Pheng, what is your favorite park in the Bay Area? It does not have to be a national park, but if we were going to go explore, hike, discover, where would you send us off to?
Okay, so I'm a little biased. I work for East Bay Regional Park, so come visit me, please. I work at Black Diamond Mines, so if you want to just hike in the park, literally in the park, I can lead you on the mine tour. And you can go a quarter mile underground. So I would definitely recommend people checking us out.
And what town are we driving
it's
to?
in Antioch, California. So it's a little drive east on the 4.
Great. Pheng, what about you? Where do you send us to?
Okay, so my answer may be a tad disappointing. I have yet to venture too much into green spaces in the East Bay. I live in Berkeley too. But, I'll have to go with Tilden Park, just right up the hill. Yeah, and I will definitely get in touch with Virginia here and, see where else I can go.
So Mike, we know the park you're going to say, so that's why I don't ask that question. But Mike, right now we're working with Yosemite National Park and NatureBridge. We're building the National Environmental Science Center, and this is going to be a permanent home for youth to study, to learn, to become future conservationists in Yosemite National Park. Tell us a little bit about that partnership and what you think it means for Yosemite's future and our partnership together.
So it's exciting time, and you're here tonight to kind of celebrate the overall thing about NatureBridge, and it's more than Yosemite, right? But it sort of started in Yosemite, right, with the Institute. And I mentioned Crane Flat earlier, which was a place that a lot of us went to, and it's a fairly rustic place. And it just is limited in how we can embrace modern education. So there's the place in Yosemite West area that NatureBridge and we are cooperating on to try and get built. And the way that I was telling Phil the other day that I think about it is 100 years ago in Yosemite, they built what was then the Ahwahnee. It's now called the Majestic, but it's still the Ahwahnee. And, and the parks were built under some guys like that for tourism, to bring people in, to make them comfortable. There were other things too. There were the Curry family that let the fire fall, right, and those stories. And in many ways now, as we morph into a new era of diversity and urban populations of a changing climate, what better investment? And what will the crowd be like 100 years from now, saying what happened when NatureBridge finally this fall opened its permanent campus in a place like Yosemite? That is the investment that we're making. The next 100 years where parks will be inspirational places of maybe not just education, but experience, and building men and women like these two, and on many of you in the crowd tonight to lead forward, not just in the environment necessarily, just in life and in society. It happens in places like this, and it happens with things like NatureBridge. And that's how I think about your campus. It's not just a campus.
So, so be prepared to ask a question, because I think we've got a few more minutes. But what I'm hearing is you've got an opportunity to go to Black Diamond Mine in Antioch and hang out with Virginia. Maybe you can hook up with Pheng and go out to Tilden. Epic Regional Park right near here. Of course, through Yosemite, you can see, and with Mike and with NatureBridge, you can see the Merced Grove, you can see the National Environmental Science Center, and of course, our incredible national park just to the north of us here, Golden Gate National Recreation Area. So is there anyone in the crowd who would like to ask a question to any of our panelists? I'm throwing this out to the crowd. Fire away, and I'll repeat the question.
I'm going to be a little bit of a troublemaker here, Virginia, but would you feel comfortable singing that song?
So Virginia was asked if she would sing the song that she learned in 6th grade.
Of course. All right. So does anyone want to volunteer to be in the front, maybe with me? So this is, how about you? Because you asked. All right. So this is a very easy song. This is a song that helps folks get familiar with the 3 different rock types. So go back to 4th grade science. You got your sedimentary rock, yeah, like this. And then sedimentary, igneous, metamorphic. So this is a Do As I Do song and also a Repeat After Me song. So you will be fine if you just do what I do and repeat after me. Okay. All right. You mind?
Yeah. I'll hold it for you. Do you want us to hold it up here so you
I
can
don't know. I have to use my
All right.
hands. Okay.
We're going to go like this.
you have to use your hands.
Yeah, I'll stand on the other side.
All right. All right. You guys ready?
I have to hold it back here.
Sedimentary.
Sedimentary.
Igneous.
Igneous.
Metamorphic.
Metamorphic.
Rocks.
Rocks.
There we go. You guys passed 4th grade science standards.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so grateful for you all being here tonight, joining us, and my incredible thanks and deep and heartfelt appreciation to Virginia Delgado, to Mr. Pheng Lor, And to Mr. Mike Reynolds. So folks, why don't you grab another drink, socialize. We're going to get started in the other room in about 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you for joining us.